Alright, so normally when I make a video response to someone, it's someone who I expect to be able to respond back. Um, yeah, in this case, making a video response to the Young Turks, I know that I'm not going to get some video response back from Cenk Uygur, but um, I felt compelled to respond to, well, I guess there's one video I'm responding to particular, but a couple videos I made um, about the shooting in Arizona. I felt compelled to make this response because I think what he's saying is kind of like exactly the wrong response to this sort of thing. He's basically saying, um, Republicans are, are bad. They're, the blood is on their hands for this because they had all this heated rhetoric, and don't you dare use this false equivalency. And this shooter was clearly right wing, and therefore shame on you, Republicans. Now, a few things. I agree that the rhetoric has gotten way too heated, and that the majority of that blame belonged on the right. But I would first of all want to clarify that the right includes a broad spectrum, just as the left does. And I would want to submit that if the shooter's name was Abdul Muhammad, and then the media message would be, Islam inspired this guy to commit this murder. I think we would rightly want to make a distinction between violent jihadist Islam and the peaceful Islam that the vast majority of Muslims practice. So I think it's similarly a mistake when we try to use this blanket statement of the right and blame them for for this kind of tragedy. And Cenk talked in another video about violence by the right, and you mentioned on the one hand the sort of Tea Party Glenn Beck crowd, like the guy who went in that liberal church and started shooting, and then went in to talk about neo-Nazis shooting up places. Now, both in all those instances, obviously people got killed. That there's obviously heated rhetoric on those sides, but I think we would do ourselves a disservice if we didn't make a distinction between the sort of Glenn Beck Tea Party right and the neo-Nazi anti-Semitic right. That those are different groups. And this shooter, to the extent that he had a political ideology, and certainly obviously the guy seems to have had some sort of schizophrenia that makes his ideology sort of hard to decode. It seems to have belonged more to what we might call sort of the Alex Jones InfoWars conspiracy theory, right? I mean, he was a 9/11 truther. He had this idea that the government was controlling us through grammar. I think that's not anything I've heard Glenn Beck or Ann Coulter talk about. So I mean, to make a blanket statement to say the right, it's this guy. This is your guy. You're responsible for him. I think it's irresponsible. But even aside that, let's suppose he was a regular Tea Party kind of guy. I think it's one thing to say, we should take this moment to reflect upon our political rhetoric, versus simply pointing the finger. Says it's you guys, you're responsible, shame on you, blah blah blah. There's even if both statements are true, I think that one is more productive and more fruitful in bring us together. So yeah, I mean, I think there, you know, I mean, does Sarah Palin bear some responsibility for this? You know, I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe the killer did see that, map of targets, and yeah, obviously, I mean, I would be surprised if he wasn't somewhat influenced by the atmosphere of political of heated, violent rhetoric, which I have been quite frightened by myself. I do think that it has gotten way out of hand. But rather than saying you guys are bad for doing that, I think we should say, can we please get back to having civil discourse and and get back to recognizing each other as humans? Because the more you try to turn it into a blame game, the more you're escalating that rhetoric and not trying to calm it down. So I think this ought to be a time when we all move back towards some level of civility. Thanks for listening. Peace.